The city was shrouded in a veil of darkness as the rain poured down relentlessly. Detective Matthew Sinclair hurried to the latest crime scene, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. Another innocent life had been taken, and the elusive serial killer had struck again. As he approached the alley, the familiar sights and sounds of an active investigation greeted him. Uniformed officers cordoned off the area, and the forensic team meticulously combed the scene for any clues. Matthew took a deep breath, steeling himself for the grim task ahead. The victim, a young woman in her mid-20s, lay motionless on the ground, her lifeless eyes staring into the void. Matthew knelt beside the body, his gaze drawn to a small, intricate puzzle piece placed neatly on the victim's chest. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his brow furrowed in confusion. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the puzzle piece was no mere coincidence. The killer had left it as a deliberate message, a challenge to the detective tasked with solving the case. Matthew gathered his team and began piecing together the evidence. The victim's personal belongings were intact, suggesting the killer's motive was not robbery. The cause of death was strangulation, a signature method that linked this crime to the previous two victims. "This guy is toying with us," Matthew said, his frustration evident. "He's leaving these puzzle pieces as a twisted game, daring us to figure out his next move." The team worked tirelessly, scouring the crime scene for any additional clues. They scanned the area for security camera footage, interviewed witnesses, and searched for any connections between the victims. But the killer remained elusive, leaving only the puzzle pieces as breadcrumbs to follow. Days turned into weeks, and the city lived in fear as the serial killer continued his deadly spree. Matthew and his team were under immense pressure to find the killer before he struck again. Then, the unthinkable happened. Another victim was discovered, this time in a secluded park. The same modus operandi, the same puzzle piece left on the body. Matthew's heart sank as he realized the killer was taunting him, daring him to keep up with his twisted game. "We need to find a pattern, something that connects these victims," Matthew said, his eyes scanning the crime scene. "There has to be a reason he's leaving these puzzle pieces behind." The team worked tirelessly, analyzing every detail, every shred of evidence. They searched for any common threads between the victims, any clues that could lead them to the killer's identity. As the investigation reached a critical juncture, Matthew stumbled upon a crucial piece of information. The puzzle pieces, when arranged in a specific order, formed a map that led to a remote location on the outskirts of the city. "This is it," Matthew said, his eyes alight with determination. "The killer is leading us to his next victim, and we're going to be there to stop him." With a team of officers in tow, Matthew raced to the location indicated by the puzzle pieces. The tension was palpable as they approached the abandoned warehouse, their weapons drawn and their senses on high alert. The warehouse was eerily silent as Matthew and his team entered, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. They searched the building, room by room, until they reached a dimly lit basement. There, in the center of the room, stood the killer, a twisted smile on his face. He held a young woman captive, a knife pressed against her throat. "Welcome, Detective Sinclair," the killer said, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been expecting you." Matthew's heart raced as he faced the killer, his gun trained on him. "It's over," he said, his voice steady. "Release the woman and surrender, or I'll be forced to shoot." The killer's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Matthew thought he might comply. But then, with a sudden movement, he slashed the woman's throat, her agonized scream piercing the air. In the chaos that followed, Matthew and his team engaged the killer in a fierce struggle. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse as the two adversaries fought for their lives. In the end, the killer lay dead, his twisted game finally over. The young woman, though gravely injured, was rushed to the hospital, her life hanging by a thread. Matthew stood in the aftermath, his clothes stained with blood and his heart heavy with the weight of the lives lost. He knew that the killer's puzzle had been solved, but at what cost? As the investigation continued, the team uncovered the killer's twisted motivations and the intricate web of clues he had left behind. It was a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked in the human mind and the relentless pursuit of justice that was required to bring such evil to an end. In the days that followed, the city slowly began to heal, the fear and uncertainty giving way to a renewed sense of hope. And Matthew, weary but resolute, knew that he would continue to fight, to protect the innocent and bring justice to those who had been wronged. The serial killer's puzzle had been solved, but the true victory lay in the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering determination of those who stood against the darkness. In the weeks that followed the final confrontation with the serial killer, Detective Matthew Sinclair found himself grappling with the emotional aftermath of the case. The young woman who had been taken hostage in the warehouse had survived, but her recovery was a long and arduous process, both physically and mentally. Matthew visited her in the hospital, offering what comfort and support he could. The woman's eyes held a haunted look, a silent testament to the trauma she had endured. As Matthew listened to her recount the horrific ordeal, he was reminded of the true cost of his work, the human lives that hung in the balance, the scars that could never fully heal. With the killer's demise, Matthew and his team turned their attention to unraveling the mystery behind the puzzle pieces. They pored over the evidence, meticulously piecing together the clues that the killer had left behind. It was a painstaking process, but slowly, the picture began to emerge. The puzzle pieces, when arranged in a specific order, revealed a map that led to the killer's lair, a testament to his twisted intellect and his desire to taunt the authorities. As they delved deeper, the team uncovered the killer's disturbing motivations. He had been a brilliant, but deeply disturbed, individual who had long harbored a fascination with puzzles and the human mind. His crimes were not mere acts of violence, but rather a twisted game, a challenge to those who sought to stop him. The impact of the case weighed heavily on Matthew, both professionally and personally. He had faced the darkness head-on, staring into the abyss of the human psyche, and it had left its mark. His colleagues noticed the change in his demeanor, the way he carried himself with a newfound gravity. The once confident detective had become more introspective, his eyes often distant as he grappled with the implications of his work. Matthew found solace in the support of his team, who had become like a family to him. They understood the toll that such cases could take, and they rallied around him, offering a shoulder to lean on and a listening ear when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. As the dust settled and the city began to heal, Matthew found himself at a crossroads. The serial killer's puzzle had been solved, but the scars it had left behind would never fully heal. He knew that he could not continue on the same path, not without risking his own well-being. It was time for a change, a chance to step back and reassess his priorities, to find a way to balance the demands of his work with the need to care for his own mental and emotional health. With a renewed sense of purpose, Matthew made the difficult decision to transfer to a different department, one that would allow him to focus on prevention and community outreach. It was a bittersweet moment, but he knew it was the right choice, not just for him, but for the victims he had sworn to protect. As he walked away from the precinct, Matthew couldn't help but reflect on the lessons he had learned. The serial killer's puzzle had been a harrowing experience, but it had also taught him the importance of resilience, of never giving up in the face of darkness. And with that knowledge, he knew that he would continue to fight, to make a difference in the world, one puzzle at a time.